Deftones is an alternative metal band formed in Sacramento, California back in 1988. Over the past 3 decades, they've experienced continuous success as they managed to carve their own path in metal music history. They've released a total of 8 albums so far, and is currently recording a new one that's hopefully set to release this or the next year. But their fans have for a long time expected the release of an unreleased album of theirs, Eros. This was an album they started working on back in 2007 and began to record in 2008. The project came to a halt when their bassist and bandmate Chi Cheng got in a car accident and fell into a minimally conscious state, making him unable to do more or less anything. In 2009, vocalist Chino Moreno announced that their new album would be delayed indefinitely, something that led them to shelve the project for more than a decade. The vocalist Moreno mentioned that Eros would be released at some point though, leaving fans curious to find out when it would be released, what it would sound like, and how it encapsulates a time where the band faced personal challenges. This is a brief introduction to Deftones' Eros. Some music journalists have labeled the time between 2000 and 2006 as Deftones' quote-unquote dark days because they experienced a lot of personal issues during this time. The band was in this gray area where they didn't know if they wanted to go on or not. Vocalist Chino Moreno toured with his side project Team Sleep during this time, and Deftones' 5th album, Saturday Night Rest, was made by the members entirely by sending their recordings over email instead of meeting up and writing it together like they would usually do. Prior to the tour of Saturday Night Rest though, the band and their management decided to attend a meeting to plan for the future. Surprisingly enough, all the members were on the same page when they were asked if they wanted to keep on playing. So with a boosted morale and clear mind, they all went on to tour their 5th album and then started working on their next album, Eros, during May of 2007. This time, during their shows and tours, they always made the priority to have a rehearsal space backstage. And about this change of plans, Chino Moreno said, "We're going in there and playing as 5 of us in the room with just our instruments and no other distractions. That's how we started out basically, when we first started the band. Us in the garage, no Pro Tools or anything to get us ahead of ourselves. We'd just play things over and over again until we remembered it. That's the rawest way you can do it, and the best, I think." In October 2007, they returned home to California to what they called their quote-unquote treehouse with a studio. The studio that was originally nicknamed The Spot was refurbished with a bar, and they would often have a drink and play cards before or after rehearsal and recording sessions. They consciously made this positive change in their environment to make their work stress-free. Many of the members were going through money issues, custody battles, and divorces among other things, so it was probably a good decision to make. The working title for their new album initially started out as an inside joke when they were touring in Germany. During their time there, they always managed to stumble into German. Yeah, I can't say on this channel. It's crazy. Probably they stumbled into stuff like this in unexpected ways and way too many times. And every time it would happen, one of the members would always say, Eros, with a hilariously lustful and heavy German accent. The joke lasted for years and was so memorable that it became the title of their album. On April 14th, 2008, they entered studio sessions with producer Terry Date, whom they had worked with on numerous albums in the past. Around this time, the band opened a blog to keep fans updated on their current actions as well. They would post videos of themselves doing work in the studio once a week, but only 5 were released before the recordings came to a halt. Chino Moreno was apparently halfway through finishing up his vocal parts for the album at this point, and 75 to 80% of the instrumental work was also done. Now, as most longtime Deftones fans already know, Chi Cheng was involved in a car accident during this time. He was on his way from his brother's memorial service on the 3rd of November 2008 when it happened. He damaged his brain, spent months and years in the hospital in an unconscious state, and despite of massive support from fans, family, friends, and fellow musicians, he died a few years later. In July of 2009, the band mentioned that they had indefinitely shelved Eros to work on a new album. It's unclear whether the decision to leave Eros was a purely creative decision or if the death of Chi had something to do with it. As Chino said about Eros in an interview with Spin magazine back in 2010, quote, "I couldn't tour behind a record with all these memories of Chi attached to it," end quote. They allegedly later on said that the change of plans was made because they weren't satisfied with the music itself. So again, this question is still not answered clearly. Apparently, Eros was a heavier and darker album compared to the one they ended up releasing. There's still a lot of dark moments on Diamond Eyes though, so it makes you wonder in what way Eros would be darker. The latest news about Eros came out in 2016 after the release of the band's 8th and latest album, Gore. In an interview by The Independent, Chino Moreno said, quote, "I had faith it was going to come together and be great in the end, but we never got to that point. Once Chi had his accident, everything came to a halt with the Eros sessions, so the idea of going back to the batch of songs, finish them, and have Sergio learn Chi's parts just wasn't like something we were interested in doing. If the record was finished and we were just sitting on it, we probably would have put it out by now, maybe even given it away just so that people can hear it, but it would take a lot more work to get it done. But when we get together, we're much more fascinated with where we are in this moment, trying to create something new," end quote. With this being said, a lot of fans made peace with the idea that the album maybe never will see the light of day. This frame of thinking was further emphasized in a recent video podcast on the Lamb Goat YouTube channel featuring Every Time I Die vocalist Keith Buckley. At 27 minutes and 25 seconds into the video, Keith starts talking about being in the studio when Deftones were about to record Diamond Eyes. Apparently, they had a tape of demo material of Eros with them so that their new producer Nick Raskulinis could listen. Quote, "Nick's like, no, this is not the record you're putting out," end quote. Now, so far, there's only a few things we know to be true about Eros. One song from the album has been published so far under the name Smile. This is actually a studio recording with great sound quality. There's also a couple of live performances of a song called MELANIE on YouTube, which is another song off the album. Rumors say that these are the only 2 times that this song has ever been performed. On YouTube, you can also find an unknown song rehearsal that fans refer to as Dallas. This was originally leaked through a channel called JG Productions. To conclude, we really don't know much about Eros. It's an unreleased, unfinished album that was supposedly not that good, according to people that worked on it. Despite of that, there were some golden nuggets like Dallas and Smile on there. I'm not sure what to make of MELANIE personally because of the bad audio quality. Now about the whole project, I don't try to expect too much from this, and to whatever information that's released in the following months or years about the project, I'd be quite critical. We can never really know whether it's gonna be released or not, and most likely, from what we've learned so far, it's probably not gonna be released. I want to give a shout out to Vasonic for sharing a Reddit article on the subject of Eros. He or she nicely summed up all the material we can access related to Eros so far. So I'll link to that Reddit article and the material down in the description below if you want to know more. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. From now on, I'll only make videos about my 5 most favorite rock and metal bands, and these are Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, Mastodon, Deftones, and the Mars Volta. I'm also working on a guitar course at the moment, so let me know down below the top 5 Deftones songs you would love to learn how to play. Thank you so much. Cheers.